Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's episode of Mark's Mouthpiece with Thomas Gansch, who is my guest today. Of course, he's with Mnozil Brass, Gansch and Roses, great jazz player. You all know him. And I'd like to thank my sponsors, Euclid IQ, the world's leader in audio and video compression. And also my new sponsor, Guard Bags. This is my Guard Bag Double, and it holds a lot of stuff inside. You can see it has many things. You can pull out one of the Chickowitz books, which you can find at Vincent Chickowitz at Studio259productions.com. You can pull out one of Fritz Domro's books, which you can find on fritzdomro.com. Or if you're doing some score study, Petrushka. Thomas, it's great to see you.
Great to see you. I have kind of a deja vu, but
yes.
It's great to be here.
It's great to be here. Great to see you. Hey, so Thomas, before we get started talking about Mnozil, I wanted to talk about your early years and how you started. How old were you when you started to play?
I started to play the trumpet properly when I was 8.
Right.
I used to play on a little self-made horn my father made for me before running around producing sound. But when I was 8, I got like a week before my birthday, I got a Yamaha cornet and I started to play on this. That was my first horn.
So what were those lessons like with your dad early on?
Terrifying. I was tortured with having to take lessons with my father. There was not one single lesson I didn't run out of crying, run up the stairs to mommy, and everything was terrible because he would just do his thing. He would compose some stuff, and I thought he didn't listen. And when I made a mistake, he only said, "Wrong, do it again." And he did not accept any of my complaints or anything. And I had nothing to say. I just had to do. So I hated it, naturally.
Well, you had a slightly older brother who was, of course, the famous Hans Gansch, and is the famous Hans Gansch. Can you talk about that influence on you as a kid and when you really learned that he was a great player?
Yeah, I mean, I never learned he was a great player. I just thought every trumpet player should sound like him because that was the sound I always heard when I was a kid. And as time went by, I saw that actually nobody sounds like him. So I just had the ideal sound just right next to me all the time. I remember when he was home, he was practicing, and he was never doing like Clark studies or stuff like that, or Arban or anything we all do. He was just improvising, played melodies, and just produced nice sound all the time. So I learned really how it should sound very early on. And he's still my earliest and greatest and longest influence.
There have been some of the Gansch at Home episodes lately have been the two of you guys playing together. How old were you when you guys maybe were good enough to play duets with Hans? Do you remember any of that?
Not really. I think when I was studying the trumpet in Vienna, we got to play together in a band called Pro Brass. That's a brass ensemble. It was like 17 people, and he played first, and I played like fifth and flugelhorn. But some of these tours were very, very nice, and I heard him do some of the greatest playing I've ever heard to anybody. So, especially one tour where normally in this ensemble we had like specialists for the first trumpet, for the piccolo trumpet, a specialist for lead trumpet playing, a specialist for the classical stuff, a specialist for the flugelhorn stuff, and so some of the lead players were not available. So it turned out that on this one tour in '95, he had to play all the difficult parts in every style on every horn. So I've never heard anybody do something like that perfect and that well. So in the beginning of the show, he would play like an opening on C trumpet, very hard tune. Then we would play like the spring from the Four Seasons. He would switch to piccolo and play, and then play the second movement on flugelhorn, the solo, and then the last movement again on piccolo, and then he would play like really lead trumpet with a small mouthpiece and the big B flat horn, and play lead parts up to G's and G sharps, and really great, So I have never heard anybody do it that well in all different styles in like one show. And at the last show, I remember Timothy Dockschitzer was listening, and he came into the wardrobe afterwards. It was very like a holy moment.
Wow.
But now I'm fanboying out.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Fanboying is just fine. Was Gabor Tarkovi playing in pro brass at that time also?
I think he came into the band the same year, but I don't think he was on this tour. This might have been the last tour without Gabor.
Yeah.
But he joined in the same year.
Yeah. Is that the first time you met Gabor?
Yes. I met him in pro brass. Pro brass had a very, very huge influence on the brass scene here, and especially without pro brass there would not be Mnozil Brass, because they did like this mix of like comedy and music, but not like a slapstick comedy, but like jokes where you had to think, and brass music. So two things that never went well together before, thinking and brass music. So I like that very much.
That's very true. So when you were young, also you started listening to jazz very young. I mean, do you remember a point in time when you decided that, hey, maybe I don't want to go the route of my brother, I want to do something different? When did that happen for you?
This I did not have this option at all, because everybody had planned it out for me. Everybody had thought it out before me. Since I was a little kid, everybody told me, this is Thomas, and he's even more talented than Hans, and he's going to do the same thing. Yeah, go. This is Thomas. And so everybody thought I was Gansch's brother, and everybody expected me to be like Gansch, and I wasn't. So that was no fun. And when when this did not work at all, for the first time, I thought about even doing it. But I remember years before, when I first saw Dizzy Gillespie on television, on Austrian television, I knew that moment that this is what I want to do. And it was a combination of the music and the way he behaved, like the way he walked on stage, the way he treated his musicians and the audience, and the kind of easy fun that was going on. And you could tell that he had everybody in the palm of his hands. And this wasn't not only about his playing, it was his persona, everything. So Dizzy Gillespie really was the game changer he placed this thing in my head that this is what I want to do.
That's really clear too, because like when you do things with Mnozil or any other time I've seen you on stage, you always have the audience in your hand, probably very similar to what Dizzy did.
I mean, it's a great. Actually, it is an American thing. It is because when we do a show, we want to do great entertainment, like old school entertainment. We work on stuff really hard, and we want to do it that it looks very easy. And I always thought, not only like Dizzy, but like people like Sinatra or Gene Kelly or whatever, like people where you saw they have everybody in their hands, and it looks so incredibly easy.
Yeah. But there's a lot of planning
Yeah.
behind it, obviously, and a lot of precision that comes with that ease.
Yeah, but we didn't know that when we started that there had to be things had to be planned. We just did it, and but with the time we saw, it's a lot of work is going into this. So, but we didn't plan anything; it just happened.
Well, let's talk about your jazz background a little bit. When you were starting to learn jazz, how did you do it? Were you a transcriber? Were you just playing by ear a lot? Do you remember that?
I shouldn't tell you this because I always tell my students to transcribe everything, but I only transcribed three solos. One was Clifford Brown. No, four. One was Clifford Brown. One was Clark Terry. One was Randy Brecker,
Hmm.
and one was Freddie Hubbard. I only did four, and I learned a lot from it, but I didn't carry on transcribing stuff.
When
I did mostly just playing with Aebersold CDs, and then meeting with other people and play, and then later on go to sessions and then play gigs.
yeah,
But mostly playing jazz is like doing it. It's you cannot theoretically sort it out and then do it. The big difference is when you're a classical player, you learn something at home with the music and then you perform it more or less well. But as a jazz player, you have to go on stage and you can, if you prepare it and then you play it, it's not jazz. So you have to come up with something new on stage. So it was mostly for me going on stage and drop the pants, and then you're on. There were times I was sitting at home, like playing with CDs, and I thought, man, I'm really good. It's really happening. Ooh. And then I went to the club, and for the first time at a session, and it was blank. Nothing was there, and so I had to learn to fail and learn to do it, and I had to learn to live with the fact that sometimes it was just bad. So, uh, but you can't plan it out and then perform it, then it's not happening. So
yeah.
most of it is just do it.
Just do it. Were
Yeah.
there? Did you? I know you said you didn't transcribe much. Were you studying the harmony? Were you studying the theory behind it to help you
No,
learn?
I always was too lazy to study because I'm very easy with remembering stuff, and for me music is like language. It's a vocabulary you learn, and you listen to something and you put it into your box, and then you take it out of the box when you need it. And so with time you learn to communicate. But I learned to about harmonics with the years because I always got like a score, and I read what I was playing should be okay, this is written here, this must be the flat five, okay. But this came with time. I never sat down with the piano and studied it and checked it out. I was
Yeah.
just too lazy, and everybody should be not that lazy.
Um, so if I were to list some players for you, could you talk a little bit about that person and maybe some like a recording or two that you might be really into? I mean, this
Okay.
might sound like something you've been asked before, for example, but
I have that strange feeling, but
we
I
get.
I can't tell. Please,
uh,
please.
let's start with the basics. Louis Armstrong.
Uh, One of the greatest sounds ever, and one of the greatest singers ever. And the combination of playing and singing never was more obviously connected and more important. And it comes from the same heart. It's just so original as anything could be, and it's always touching. And as a recording, I would recommend a CD called Satchmo Serenades. I think it was an album originally. He only plays ballads and he sings a lot, and it's just so tastefully arranged and performed, and it's just wonderful.
What about and going back to your first hero, Dizzy Gillespie?
Yes, he opened up all the doors. It didn't get any more modern after him. It just got different, but he just played everything you could imagine, and he has the greatest sense of timing and phrasing, and weird, a very, very unique, weird way of playing lines that nobody else ever had, actually. I mean, except Faddis, who like copied him. He used to play like the young Dizzy for a long time, which is incredible. But he played this very, very unique stuff, which is, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dizzy.
And another happy player that we're going to talk about was Clark Terry.
Yeah, Clark Terry is maybe the most influential jazz trumpet player for the whole community. His whole persona. I met him once, talked to him for a few minutes. That was very nice. I saw him live, because most of the great players I did not see live because they just died before my time, which is a shame. But Clark, always happy, always killing it every single time. I never heard him play bad once. And I have that great on a VHS tape. He played. Bob Brookmeyer was conducting a German band at a festival, and they played with Clark as a soloist for his 70th or 75th birthday. I don't remember. And he plays a cadenza, and in the end, his valve gets stuck, and so it's and then he puts the horn down into bow wee ah boo, and it's so natural. It is so it takes you and it hugs you. Whatever he does, he hugs you with it, and he's the most swinging player ever, I guess.
Yeah. By the way,
And
just
recommendation, Basic Jam number 2. There is a, a record called Basic Jam 2. It is Louis Bellson on the drums. It is Lockjaw is on it. Al Gray is on it. Count Basie is on it. Joe Pass is on it. Clark Terry plays one of the best solos I have ever heard play anybody.
I think I have that record.
Yeah, you should listen to it, man.
I think I have it actually. And then from happy to tragic, Clifford Brown.
Yeah, Clifford Brown was the first solo I transcribed because he was so clear in his phrasing and his playing. It was so clear to hear what he was playing. So he was pretty easy to write down, and he was such a complete artist. But he took it to another level, I think, because he was really practicing his stuff. There were like tapes where you hear him practicing solos, which is unbelievable, because he was always working on his craft, and he took it very seriously. And it's a tragic thing that he died so young, so soon. But I always had that feeling that there was a line of players, Clifford, to a degree, we shot from the same stream, and especially the first 3-4 players, they sound as if one guy just grew older, like Navarro, Clifford Brown, and also Booker Little. Yeah. Next one. And they all sound as they're coming up from the same root, and they sound sometimes like one player developed and got better and better and better.
Would you remember
Clifford Brown with Strings is the album.
That is a great album. What solo did you transcribe of Clifford Brown's? Do you remember?
Not really. I think the tune, I don't know the name now. I can't recall the name, but this is the tune. It starts with but I can't come up with the title right now.
And I can see the
Yeah.
the album cover in my head. But
there aren't so many. But there's one bootleg recording where Clifford Brown, Clark Terry, and Maynard are jamming.
Yeah, with Dinah Washington.
Session. It's that's pretty fun.
Yeah, and you can always tell who's who on that recording.
Definitely.
Yeah. Although Clifford really keeps up with Maynard's high chops on that recording. It's
And so does Clark Terry.
Yeah, so does Clark Terry. Yeah, nobody keeps up with Clark's articulation though.
I mean, yeah, but nobody keeps up with Maynard when he goes into the Maynard sphere. So though,
Yeah,
and nobody ever sounded that great in that height. So
no, it's amazing recording.
mm.
Lee Morgan.
uh, my two favorite players when I think of the jazz trumpet, I always think of Lee Morgan and Freddie Hubbard. I'm sure you're going to ask me about Freddie afterwards. So Lee is for me the one I always can listen to. There are even on a bad day, he's going for it all the time, and he's always on complete fire, which is compelling and fascinating at the same time. And as an album, I would recommend Roots and Herbs by Art Blakey.
Roots and Herbs. And yeah, of
Especially
course.
there's a tune called Ping Pong, the opening tune. It's a crazy tune. And yeah, but Lee is always great. Any time of the day, every day of the year, you can listen to Lee. It's always fantastic.
Oh yeah. So the next one was going to be Freddie Hubbard.
Yeah, Freddie Hubbard used to be my favorite player for a long, long time, but kind of ended up very tragically for me because I adored him so much, and I will never forget that day when I went to the record store and I saw that he had made a comeback record, and I grabbed it and I put the headphones and I listened to it, and I heard that his chops were shot and he couldn't play anymore, and I started to cry, and I put the headphones down and left the shop. So it's kind of up and down thing for me because I love his music, even when he's like he got flatter and flatter and flatter with the years. I even love some of the very very bad stuff,
Yeah.
but I'm not sure if he was a nice person. I cannot tell. Sometimes I think he wasn't. Um, as a recording, the solo I transcribed was from an Impulse record, and it was his solo on Caravan. And that's one of the albums when he was very young. I liked it very much. And then there's another record recording. We just talked about it the other day when we met Jerry Hay. You remember that?
Yes.
Fly Like the Wind is the record. It's like an LA studio big band recording, and
Oh, it's on YouTube.
Chuck and Gary are playing in the big band.
Yeah, that's a great. It's on YouTube if people haven't seen that. But
Yeah, because I really like this commercial music he made. This one record with George Benson, it's fantastic. With a big orchestra and very commercial. And I don't know the title, but many recommendations about Freddie.
Yeah, I'm sure if it's George Benson, we could always ask Jerry Hay what it was.
Oh, I'm sure. And a very special thing about Freddie, he's also very very unique in the way he plays lines. He sometimes he plays like a saxophone player. He does things that no trumpet player does, which leads naturally to Woody Shaw, I guess.
Yes, that would be the next person I would have on the list.
But for Woody Shaw, I admire him totally, but I am just too stupid and too oompa band, grown up in oompa bands to understand this fourth playing. He plays so complicated that I always ask myself, how is this possible? And I admire it, but I can't do it.
Yeah. The chordal and quintal harmony.
And I recommend from Woody Shaw. I don't know the name of the record, but his wife wrote a tune for him called "Just a Ballad for Woody," and it starts like Body and Soul, but then it takes another road, and it's a very nice tune. And I once had a videotape of him and Freddie Hubbard playing in Berlin. Freddie Hubbard played with his quintet or quartet, and he invited Woody Shaw on stage. And then Woody was featured on this ballad, and I sat there with the VHS tape, and I was just, my jaw dropped because this was out of this world. It was so beautiful and so out and so wonderful. So Just a Ballad for Woody, if you can find the tune, That's a
And
good one.
so the next one would be the toughest one because there's so many eras, but Miles Davis.
Uh, Miles Davis, a very, very close friend of mine, and by the way, one of the greatest trumpet players I know is his name is Anil Sumari. He lives here in Vienna. He's from London. He once said to me, Miles has that sound that all trumpet players want to have, and that's quite right, I guess, because Miles can tell a whole story with just one note. And what I really like about Miles is what happens. I mean, I like this about all great jazz players, but what happens when he makes a mistake? I love this. He goes for something and then he cracks up a note and then he does something with it and it becomes another idea, a new thing. And sometimes I really wished I was like that. And I try to be, but sometimes just recently I recorded something yesterday and it wasn't great. I didn't have a great day, so I started to think a lot, and then and when I made a mistake, I just stayed with this mistake, and it was bad. I should have just gone with it and do something with it, but it was like driving a bumper car. Yeah, I was having a ride, and boom, what happened? And I should have just take the wheel and go on. But I just wasn't struck by the fact that I played badly. So Miles never had that. He went for something, it went wrong. He took it and made another street for himself. Fantastic. And to pick one album is very hard because you should pick one for each period, and there are so many great albums, and most of them are really happening. I love, of course, Kind of Blue. I love all the recordings with Gil Evans. I love, from the later stuff, I love Star People very much. That was his comeback, I think, after the very long break. But I'd have to say my favorite of all of them is Tribute to Jack Johnson. That's like heavy jazz rock stuff. Two tracks, both half an hour long, and he goes for it and he plays his ass off. It's fantastic.
Would that album have ever motivated you to do anything crazy?
Ah, no. No, I have that. That's that favorite, that famous picture of Miles on
Yeah.
the album. I have it. I have it tattooed on a body part. I will not tell you which.
uh, Lou Stoloff.
Great influence and a great man, and a funny man, and a strange man. Um, I heard him play a show in Vienna in 1995, and this show was with Ray Anderson's Alligatory Band, and this concert changed my whole understanding of what you could do on stage and in music. And after that show, which ended, by the way, by the audience would not stop applauding for like 20 minutes, and the band came out for a last encore. After, I think they already had left the building, but they came back. I don't know. But after this show, I bought absolutely everything I could find from Lou. So I bought all the recordings from the Manhattan Jazz Quintet and everything where I found him on as a sideman. And years later, when I had a first marriage that broke up, and then after this breaking up, I went to New York just to find a reason to go on, and then I came across Lou, and we hung out, and it was very nice. So years later, he took me under his wing for a short period, and he was a very nice guy. And I wanted to work with him, and
What did you work on? What did you guys do?
no, I wanted to invite him for something over here, but then he died, like very unexpected. Shame. But I got to work with Taylor, so we kind of half even.
Um, When he took you under his wing a little bit, what was that? What was that like? What was he?
No, we were just hanging out. We met in New York. He subbed at some Broadway show, and the trumpet player who was in the show called me, and we went out and we had dinner, and then he went to a Cuban place where he played, and he sat in with the band, and then we went to the 55 bar, and then he sat in there, and he took me to his place, and then we had at a diner next to his place, we had food like at 3 a.m, and then we went to his flat, and he showed me like all his mouthpieces and the smallest trumpet in the world. But don't play the neighbors. But he was a crazy, funny, lovable, nice guy who happened to be one of the greatest trumpet players. And I always thought of him as the guy whose jobs I would like to have. If I could choose a pair of jobs, I would have taken Lou's. But I never changed mouthpiece, and sometimes he changed mouthpieces. Like he always carried 8 mouthpieces, and he changed them within a song, sometimes even within a phrase. But he sounded great, so that's okay. It was okay.
So I've heard you mention this name before, Conrad Gozzo.
One of the holy trinity of lead trumpet players. It's Gozzo, it's Snooky on, it's Al Porcino, and Gozzo is. I cannot pick one of them to be the greatest, and there are so many more. But Gozzo has a very special way of leading a tight band. Gozzo is probably like Maurice Murphy in the classical field. He's like one of the greatest lead players that ever sat in a big band, and he led this band, especially Billy May's band. And I would highly recommend all the records, all the recordings that Sinatra did with Billy May, as well as some of the commercial Billy May records, like recordings like The Naughty Operetta. That's very funny. And Gozzo's playing is always breathtaking. It's so tight, and it has a very, very it has a sharp sound, but it resonates very well.
There's a moderately famous young jazz pianist on those records. You know who I'm talking about? John Williams.
Ah, really?
Yeah. He's on some of those Billy Mays recordings. It's
Really?
mm-hmm.
Wow. He later became a concert guitar player, right?
Yeah.
Classical. Yeah.
But it is the same John Williams that was Johnny Williams on those recordings.
Yeah.
So
Fantastic. I have to check it out.
And of course, like the last guy I want to talk about before we go into talking about some of the other stuff with you is Wynton. Talk about Wynton's influence, and where do you think of Wynton?
For my money, Wynton Marsalis is the greatest trumpet player of all time, because he just can do anything in any style all the time, and the horn does what he commands. It is actually terrible. It makes me very sad. He's just a king. He's the best, and he's a very nice man. Yes. And at least to me, he is a very nice man. I've met him twice, and he was so gracious to invite me to play with him. And this was on the first night. It was terrifying and not nice at all. And on the second night, it was magical, and we really played together. And I will never forget this in my life. And he will always be that he sets the bar, and all the others try to reach it somehow. And some do in their field, but nobody overall, because he is like the best. And when you listen to him, listen to the Carnival recording, or listen to a Black Coats from the Underground, or listen to the Tomasi, or listen to especially his writing. If I had to pick an album from his writing, I'd pick Jumpstart in Jazz. That's a recording with 2 ballets he wrote for the Lincoln Center Orchestra. And this is just some of the best writing and playing in the last 30 years, I don't know. And if you look at what he has achieved, what he has done for the scene, for jazz, how how he made it valuable as a cultural precious thing for the Americans. That's has to be preserved. Like now, the Lincoln Center Orchestra is now like the Vienna Philharmonic Orchestra for classical music. It is the same for jazz, and I stood there like a year ago. I'm almost on the day a year ago. I stood on stage with them in Vienna, and they featured me on a few tunes. And on the first tune, I thought when I stood there, this is how it must have been playing with the Basie band. This is such a good band. It's a high discipline, swinging all the time, and great the use of playing loud, playing soft. Fantastic, just overall fantastic.
Yeah. And
So if somebody ever says something bad about Winton, that's completely okay. But you have to before you say something bad, you have to go on your knees and say, "I'm not worthy. You are the best." So.
I know you've had a lot of different kind of performers influence you. I mean, obviously, anybody that's seen Mnozil, especially early on, we saw like the when you were singing a lot of Queen and Bohemian Rhapsody, like.
Sorry, we have to mention one name. Nobody talks about it. George Rock. You know George Rock?
I don't know George Rock.
George Rock was the trumpet player in the City Slickers. Spike Jones and the City Slickers. Check out this trumpet player, George Rock.
George Rock. Okay.
A great influence. And he also sang some songs like "All I Want for Christmas Is My Two Front Teeth" in like a very high pitched voice. And he was also a great stage persona. Check out George Rock, incredible player.
Well, the players we did leave off a few players, especially somebody we both know, Jerry Hay. I mean, talk about the first time you were here.
When I think of Jerry Hay, I think of "In the Stone."
Yes.
Not only the recording, but also his face when a certain somebody started to talk. No, man. The two biggest things I achieved in my career, I was invited to play with Winton, and I got to play like 2 tunes in the studio with the Jerry Hay horns. So now, trumpet players out there, suck on this. I did it, and I have nothing more to achieve. I did it. I'm through, man. I'm done. I could die now. But no, Jerry Hay. I mean, every great horn section was written and led by Jerry Hay. And there are really not many other horn sections that did really important stuff that that is still around. I mean, except like Prince band, there was another horn section, and of course Tower of Power. But all the great studio work, if it's with Al Jarreau or with George Duke or with Michael Jackson, Earth, Wind and Fire, you name it, all this great music from the late 70s, mid 70s to 90s, that's always the Jerry Hay horns, and they have the very special brand sound. You can always tell it's them. And I experienced how great it is to work with them and how fast and how accurate they are doing their thing. It's incredible. And Jerry is a great master of his craft. And I have to say that I love his section. I love Gary, and most of all, of course, I love Chuck Finley, who is the greatest hang on the planet and the nicest man, and who adopted me in a bar in Zurich 5 years ago. So, Dad, if you're watching this, please write me back.
So we were going to talk about Queen a little bit because I know that's possibly the greatest rock band of all time.
It is one of the greatest rock bands of all time, but it's the game changer in my life. Next to Dizzy, the other game changer was Queen, because I grew up with only listening to Oompa music from Bohemia and and cheesy pop music from the German 60s and 70s. And when I went to a cousin's house, I heard Queen record there. I don't know if it, I think it was News of the World I heard. But when I first heard Queen and I heard this harmonies with this incredible voice, and incredible voice, we talking about greatest rock singer ever for my money.
Yeah.
So I went home and I stole all the money that my parents had saved for me and hid somewhere, and I took it all and I went to the shop and I bought all recordings of Queen. So Queen really uh, changed something, and especially their recordings from 74 to 79, 80, right before they, after the first two albums and before they used uh, electronical devices. I mean, not electronical, but no keyboards before.
Right.
So all recordings in that period are fantastic. I can recommend them all. And
Do you remember the first time you tried to go with when you first did Bohemian Rhapsody and you had to do a lot of the Freddie parts? What was that? What was that like?
it was terrible, and I didn't sing that well at all for the first few years. But it became like a thing, and we do it pretty good now, I guess. But there was a fantastic time. We were in Taiwan, in the city of Taichung, and we went, like, after the show, we went to a bar, and we just started to talk to the barkeeper. And the barkeeper at one point asked, "Ah, do you know Bohemian Rhapsody?" And we sat there and we just said, "Is this the real?" And we started to sing in harmony, and we sang the whole song. And the bar was like, they stood still. They will never forget this evening, because he just asked us if we know this, if we know that song, and then we sung the whole song. So it led to, doing this on stage led to some uh, fame, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess.
But the famous, it was the first famous video of us on YouTube. But that's this rendition I never liked, because that was really quite early on, and I couldn't sing that well. But however, whatever. If people
Whatever.
like it, let them like it. It's fine.
I think people definitely liked it. Um, so obviously I want to talk about Mnozil a little bit and how that came to be.
But sorry, going back, just one thing I had to change. I have that feeling you asked me before that question. What is the greatest rock band and why is it Queen? I have
Yeah.
to say the greatest band of all time is, of course, the Beatles, because they did something never nobody else ever pulled off. Especially also from 66, 67 till the end, you always know it's the Beatles, but it never sounds alike. Every tune sounds different, but you still can tell it's the Beatles. And this is something nobody else has pulled off. I don't know anyone. If you hear Mozart, you always know it's Mozart, and it's always like clear it's Mozart, and it's the same thing somehow.
Yeah.
But the Beatles, it always sounds completely different, and you know it's the Beatles. The songwriting skills, together with George Martin, how he arranged stuff and what they did in the studio, it's so. I think it's some of the greatest stuff that came out of the 20th century. Maybe together with Zappa. These are the real masters who pushed the boundaries of music. And Queen is just a really, really great rock band with four fantastic performers and writers.
Yeah. Has Penny Lane ever come across Mnozil's playlist yet?
Yeah, I couldn't play piccolo. I never could play piccolo, so I always tried to hide this one.
um, so talk a little about Mnozil's beginnings. You guys came up together and grew up together, and how did this turn into what it is now?
coincidence. We met on the university practicing every day, and most time you spend in the practice room and at the coffee machine. And at the coffee machine, I met Wilfried, the bass player, and Sebastian, who was the trombone player. And we kind of started this together with Gerhard Füssel and Wolfgang Sohm, who was a trumpet player. We just went to this pub called Mnozil on the other side of the street. Once a month, there was like a folk music jam thing. And there we started to play and entertain people. And the better we would entertain people, the more we would get to drink. And this is basically today still our business model. So we entertain people and they pay us drink.
Yeah.
I mean, now they pay money and we pay drink, but it's the same thing, you know. We learned in pubs, and we never planned out to have this band or this success. It just happened. And when we played together for 5 years, 6 years, we started to think this could be something we make a living with, you know. So it always developed very slowly. But now we're together almost 30 years. So it's like now it's 29 this year. It's the 29th year.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, and let's talk about the shows a little bit, because now it's obviously highly polished, and it takes you guys a while to learn a show. How long do you spend in preparation when you're getting a new show together?
It depends on the complexity of the show. If it is a very complex thing, it takes 2 years altogether. If it's just some warm up of greatest hits, it takes us maybe a few days. But I would say, because there are different levels of work it takes. So for the main composers like Leonhard Paul, Gerhard Füssel, and myself, it takes, of course, lots more preparation and time than for the others. But the really heavy period is for a new show. I would say it's 2 months before the premiere, like 4 days a week, 8 hours a day, the time we spend with the material.
And then also in there, at this point, you guys are using like a choreographer or something to deal with some of the dance?
We used different people over the years in different shows. Sometimes we used 3 people for one show. Sometimes we had no one. It's it always, it has to do with the complexity of the material. But it's very important. It's very important to have somebody from the outside who is respected by everybody, because we know each other so long. I mean, the other guys know me since I was like 15 or 16. So I was always a little shit, and I was talented, and they hated me. And we go back a very, very long time, and we're like an old couple, and now we have a good way of working together. But we had like, I didn't talk to Leonhard like for 1.5 years in the around the millennium, for example. So we all of us had difficulties with each other over the years. Some guys dropped out of the band, but we are a good bunch of guys, and we have a good time if we play, which we don't at the moment. We'll see.
Yeah, but that comes across to the audience too, that you guys are having a good time.
Oh yeah, it's very important to have a good time, because if you hate your job, why would you do it? So,
yeah, exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. What about? Did you ever hate your job when you had to spin around in circles and like most people?
Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. But it's always in waves, you know. At the end of the year, which is always the end of the season, it's always in summer, and by July you have played from since April. It was every year the same. April, May, June, July is the toughest time. All the time traveling, playing, and by the end of that period, you crawl on stage and you hate everything. And you hate, I mean, the stage is okay, but everything surrounding it is terrible, all the airports and all that shit. And that's a really great thing about Corona. I haven't seen airports that much, and I really like that. But as hard as it's at the end of such a period of hard work, as rewarding as it after a break. Like then we had like a summer break and then we would start again in the end of September or something. And the first time you go on stage, you think like after a few minutes, man, that's the greatest job in the world.
Yeah.
You have a full house and people love what you do, and you see what you give them, and you enjoy yourself with the others, and you hear again how great it actually sounds, even on a not too perfect day, because we're just a very, very good band. We played together for a very long time, and if I have a bad day, the others make up for it, and the band always sounds okay. So we had a very, very few gigs that were really bad.
Yeah.
But I have to say that, to my big shame, the worst gig we ever played is not so long ago. It was like in the summer of 19. We played a very, very, very bad gig. I don't tell more.
But I've never heard you have a bad night with Mnozil. You know,
Oh, I heard that. I almost never heard me having a great night with Nozzle, but it's
well,
point of view.
exactly. It's always worse behind the bell than it is in front of it, most of the
Mm.
time. But so I think what you guys do looks so easy to most people, but it's definitely not easy. Can you talk about your warm up and how you take care of your face and what do you
Uh, uh, I have a set I put together for myself that contains many different things. Uh, the warm up is like it's out of Spalding, like with a pedal note, stuff like that. Then I do a lot of lip trills, but that's not written down anywhere really. It's like a rhythmical thing that I developed that helps me. Um, and all this is just, I take a very long warm up for like 40 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And after that period, I am in the state that I want to be. So I try to do this every day. It doesn't depend if I have a good or a bad day. I always do it, and after this warm up, I can tell it will work somehow. And then I do technical studies and whatever, something I made up, some things by Clark, some different stuff that keeps me busy in all different directions. And very important, in the end, I always do half an hour long notes. This gives me the confidence that it will work again tomorrow, because in the end, it's just lifting weights, what we do. Once you have to practice a lot when you're young to get all the shit out of your brain into your fingers, so you don't have to struggle all the time. And once you've done this, it's just about lifting weights. It's like going to the gym every day and do this every single day. Yeah, that's it.
do you like especially periods like this, if you're playing, do you play etudes or new things like that to keep it fresh? Or?
Very rarely. If sometimes I start playing Chalier because they're always challenging and they're beautiful. Most of them are really challenging and beautiful, and I miss this in most of the other books. I also like very much I mean, if you want to learn the trumpet, just take the Arbon, and then you got all the information you need to have. So yeah. I really like in the Arbon book the 14 studies, then the 12 studies, and the 27 modern studies. I always like them very much. Like the Chalier, challenging and creative. It opens up new spaces away from the ta 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 ta, all the basic technical stuff. Once it glides over into expression, that's something I like to do. But Chalier is my favorite thing because I never make them perfect, never. And I hate it so much, but I want to be able to do them. Some of them are so hard. Yeah. And I always think, how can it be I can't do them? I have to drop a bomb here, but it will be edited out.
No. Okay, you can drop the bomb. Have you been watching Hokan play these?
No, I won't. I won't. I have recently witnessed some bombing here, and man, I don't want to do it. If you want to hear me say the F bomb, then please watch my video of Clark Etude number 5 on my Facebook channel. Thank you very much.
Have you been watching Hokan play these Charlier etudes?
No, I did not really. But I heard some videos. I saw videos on YouTube. Thibault recorded all of them with piano comping on a C trumpet, like they are for one tone higher.
Yeah.
That makes me hate them even more. It's terrible.
So, when you're playing the shows, do you warm down at the end of the day? What do you do after a show?
Actually, if it depends on how hard the show is. In the hardest shows, I really was very strict with everything. So I went home. I didn't even drink then. I did a lot of jogging and no drinking. And I went home after the gig and not to the hotel bar, but into my room and doing long notes to be sure I'll be fit again the next day.
And actually, speaking of touring and things after a show, what does your sleep schedule do to your chops when you guys are touring and the recovery?
Yeah, if you sleep enough, you'll be better recovered than if you don't. It's a very easy calculation, you know.
Is that something you wind up being disciplined about, or is it just kind of like happens when it happens?
Oh my God, it's terrible. I always go with the best intentions and then I mess it up. You know how it is.
I know, I know, I
And
know.
in the end, and then the first night you go to the bar with your friends, and the next day everything's terrible. The whole day is really bad. You're in a bad state. Then you play the show. After the show, you're happy again, and you're going to the bar again. So when being on tour, you have to be very disciplined to
Yeah.
live long and prosper.
So who are you checking out these days? What kind of music are you listening to during the pandemic?
So many different things. Since I'm using this app called Shazam, I'm using this app for a few years now. So now on my phone there is like a playlist. Every time I heard something that was interesting or that struck something with me, I checked out what is this, and it's on a playlist. So I'm listening to this playlist, and this list contains every kind of music, so many styles, so many. It's I can't even tell. It goes from Fritz Wunderlich to the Squirrel Nut Zippers to uh, to Holger Czukay to Vienna Philharmonic Orchestra. It's a big circus that I'm listening to, but not so much trumpet players at the moment because mostly people do not tell stories that I want to listen to. You know, I'm always no, yeah, but not only on the trumpet. I like to listen to people who tell me something, and I don't want to listen just to notes. I want to hear somebody tell me something. I want to hear a story. It has to have some beef, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Well, speaking of things that have some beef, I really love the Gansch at Home episodes. So if people
Oh,
haven't checked those out, they're great and they're all over the place. There's very diverse, uh, and if you want to give to Gansch at Home, you can do that.
ah,
You just have to figure out the German on the donation page, but uh, but they're definitely worth checking out. And
it's not that hard. Come on.
so when is the next episode going to be?
The next episode, actually, because of regulations and stuff, I had to start pre-record episodes now. So the last three were not live. So the next one will be on February 28th, and it's gonna be myself with a genius piano player. And we recorded it yesterday, and I played really bad. So look forward to this. Uh, but it was terrible. I felt terrible, and it took me 3 or 4 tunes till I was in. And in the end, it was really nice. But the beginning was horrible for me. But I try always to I up to now we always just put it out as it was. So I don't want to mess around with it. I don't want to cut things together.
Do you think maybe were you maybe scarred from any recent interview injuries? Is that
Could be. Who knows? Could be.
Are you excited about the West Side Story movie coming out next year?
No, I'm not excited at all because the original West Side Story movie is one of the greatest movies ever made. I think the first 20 minutes, like this opening thing, is incredible. And I mean, I love Steven Spielberg, but what can they add? I don't know.
Right.
And I think I'm afraid what they will do to the sound, to the language of the music. I hate this. We live in this strange times of remake and reboot and re-shit. I don't want to have any re-shit. I have the original. I want to hear some new stuff or see some new stuff. And it's kind of sad that everything gets recycled and recycled all over, that till the last drop of soul is squeezed out and gone. So I rather watch Pixar movies. So they have
Well,
more heart.
either way, you'll hear Wayne Bergeron, whether it's the new West Side or the Pixar. So,
That's fine. That's fine. But everybody loved that movie so much. The musical movie. What was it called?
Soul.
No, 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 no. I don't mean Soul. A few years back, the guy
Incredibles.
got the Oscar. Uh, Damien Chazelle, the guy who made Whiplash, he made that musical movie
Yeah,
with
yeah,
Emma
yeah.
Stone.
Right.
Remember?
Oh, yes, yeah, yeah, yeah. I know it. I know exactly what you're talking about, but I can't think of the name of it. And I know it's
However, everybody acted like they were reinventing the big Hollywood musical, and I'm sorry, they were not. I this was nothing near uh, Singing in the Rain. That's what I consider classical Hollywood musical, where they do all the stuff. I think it was pretty corny. The greatest thing was Wayne Bergeron playing.
that's true.
There
That's
was this
true.
trumpet player, but Wayne was playing. It was the greatest thing about the movie. But
Um,
I have to apologize because my very good friend and teacher Carol Dawn Reinhardt, she loved that movie, and I'm sorry to tell you, Carol, if you're watching this, I didn't like it. Please don't take it personal.
um, and and I guess sort of the last thing I want to talk about, because we're all dealing with this pandemic and this quarantining and all this stuff. What do you imagine the day is like when people feel safe again and things reopen? What would that be for you?
Ah, the first thing I will do if everything's normal again, which I doubt it will ever be, but if there's any kind of normality, I will go to the airport, fly to New York City, and sit down with Mark Gould and have a long chat and hang. And we're going to laugh a lot. And we're going to swear a lot. And it's going to be great fun. And then I'm going to go somewhere and play a concert where happy people sit without masks. But this is just my dream. I can't really, you know, it's been so long now. It's like a year. And I don't want to talk about it anymore because there's nothing else we're talking about. It's everything that's great about being human is somehow taken away.
Yeah.
Today, as we are doing this interview, one of my daughters, it's her birthday today, and we had a few kids here. Everybody, we tested everybody, so we were safe. And then, like, one father came here to pick up his daughter at the end, and it was the first time in, I think, 6 months I shook a hand, and I just felt that grip, and this does something to you. It's a layer of our life that I'm really missing. And the same thing, it's communication. It's the soul is a part of the body. It's not just numbers. We are not just numbers. We are human beings, and this is why we need to perform again. And I want to see people in the audience. I want to look into their eyes, and I want to see their faces lighten up, and I want to see their eyes tearing up as they're getting this sound. And I want to have these conversations again. because they are so fucking important. I'm sorry, I had to say it this time.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Do you ever imagine, like, just when you're dreaming, like that you're playing a show and Mark Gould's on the front row and he's excited about this?
No, you know, Mark is a guy. He's always nice. He always is nice to people behind their backs, as I recently witnessed. No, Mark has come to many shows, and Mark is actually he's the teacher I never had that I would really love. I would have needed him, but he wasn't there. But we got to know each other in 2008 in Banff, which was that's a story of its own. But I dearly love the man, and I wish him the best of health, and I want him to live forever, and I want to see him as often as possible, because he's a great, maybe the greatest teacher, I guess, and he has a heart of gold. He's just, you don't see it if you're not looking, and yeah, there are not enough superlatives that I have in my arsenal to talk about Mark. He is the grandmaster, and I think he is the only man who was able to explain to me the real meaning behind the Petrushka solo, and I think I will be forever grateful for that.
I I think we're all grateful for that, the meaning that we never really got out of it in school.
Yeah, it got some people out of school, but
Yes.
yeah,
Thomas,
it was a great success back in the day.
back in the day. Very good. Thomas, thank you so much for doing this. And
You're so welcome, and I wish you good luck this time with the censorship. And to all you people out there with broomsticks, take them out and relax and have a nice crisis. I hope we'll see each other again soon on this stage or another.
thank you, Thomas.
Be well. Bye, Mark.